Hi everyone, welcome to today's video. What I wanted to share with you was a couple of different ideas, I guess. The first one is two for the price of one. So making two cards fairly similar, making them look a little bit different, but being able to make two at the same time means that you've got the same supplies out and that kind of thing. So that was the first thing I wanted to show you. The second thing I wanted to show you in today's video was making some more sort of teenage boy sort of style cards. So you know, we make some beautiful girls cards and you can use flower embellishments and lots of really pretty things, and that seems to be what, you know, I definitely gravitate to, and I know a lot of other card makers do. And what we find is that we tend to miss out on all the boys' cards. So I make a lot of cards and I don't have a problem finding cards for females, girls and both sort of ladies, but when it comes to finding cards in my supplies that I've already made to give to boys, and particularly teenage boys, I tend to have a very limited amount. So what I'm going to do is show you how you can make a couple of different cards that would really suit sort of that teenage boy age, and the product that I'll be using today mainly is a 6x6, or with Kaisercraft it's 6.5 by 6.5 paper pad from their Off the Wall collection, which I think is fantastic for teenage boys, and if you're a scrapbooker then the 12x12 is great as well. So there's lots of different sort of really boy sort of style papers in here, you know, that graffiti look, yeah, really the blues and the greys and that kind of thing, so love that paper. The 12x12 papers are just as great, but because I do a bit more card making than scrapbooking, I thought I'd invest in the smaller paper pad just for value for money. Now, one of the things I do really like about the Kaisercraft paper pads is that they have these sections at the back which are, you know, like pop out pieces that coordinate with the kit, so, or the paper pads. So I'm going to use a couple of those in today's project, and what I tend to do with my 6x6 is, as I'm using them and I've got these little scrap pieces left over from previous cards that I've made, I just kind of keep them in the front, and this one I tore out and then I didn't end up using, so I tend to go there first when I start looking at the papers to use. And so because I've got two of these that are very similar, I'm actually going to switch them up and match those together and use those for my cards today. So I'm going to keep those aside and put those the rest of the papers to the side. But before I do that, I'm just going to pull out the things that I'm going to use as embellishments on the card. So I've decided I'm going to use that one that says awesome, and I'm going to use the You Rock one as well. So I'll keep those out and then I can put the rest of those papers away. Okay, so what I've also got is two A5 cards in white that I'm using, and also some black mats that will frame all of this. So just pop those to the side. Before I start assembling the card, I'm actually going to use a couple of different embellishments. So I've pulled out some cogs that I had left over, and this star, because obviously this star theme's going through the paper pack, and I want to actually paint this with distress paint. So I'm going to do that straight away so that I can let that dry, because I've got quite a bright distress paint in the blue, so peacock feathers. I'm actually going to let that dry, and then I'm going to you know, make it look a bit more vintage by using the Stormy Sky distress ink. So let's just start by giving it that bright base, and then we'll set that aside to dry while we assemble the cards, and then we'll add a little bit of a vintage look to it. So I'll just pop that off to the side for now, and then we can start thinking about how these cards are going to come together. So I'll start by folding the base of my cards, and I tend to start making the cards, and I'll do, you know, like I'll fold both cards first, and then I'll assemble the base and all of that sort of thing all in one go. So do a bit of a production line like that. But once I'm at a point that I'm sort of happy with and I want them to start looking very different, that's when I will actually go ahead and work on each card individually. So I just want a really small border for this, and so what I'll do is just by eye, I'll kind of go, okay, double the border on that side, and then I'll just flip the paper over and trim it. Much prefer to do it that way than to worry about trying to measure and then using a paper trimmer, and then I can just use my scissors to trim that down. So I'll stick that one down. Using some double-sided tape. And you know, that paper pad is absolutely fantastic, and that's what I'd say to you, sort of, if you are struggling to make boys cards, and particularly teenage boys, because they seem to be the hardest, you know, find a paper pad that you think would be really suitable, and then yeah, just sort of, you know, go back to that paper pad on a regular basis and make lots of different cards using the same paper pad. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is the same sort of technique. I'm just going to... Now, I won't throw this out just yet. I'll just pop it to the side, just in case I decide that it might work somewhere else on the card. But if for some reason I don't use it for this project, that's the sort of size I would just get rid of at the end. Okay, so I'll pop this piece down, and then I'll do exactly the same thing on the other piece. Now, already they're going to start looking different because the bigger piece is different. But the other thing that you can do to make it look a bit different is if I've put this one at the top and this one at the bottom, or the other way around, it doesn't really matter, then I can switch that out. So I could put that one at the bottom and the other one at the top. But I'll see how I go and which I like the look of by the time I get there, because you can just turn it around anyway. So I'm going to start with this one, and again that same technique of just doubling the border that I want. You could also give this one like a thicker border than the last one if you wanted to make it look different, but I quite like the sort of thin border, so I'm going to go with that. And actually, one of the ways that you can do this and make sure that they're even is now that I've got the right size there, I can actually just use that as a bit of a guide on the width. So run that along the edge, turn it over, and trim it off. And again, I'll just pop that there just in case I decide to use it. So you could use, you know, the embellishments that I'm using today are just bits and pieces that I had left over. So they were 3 cogs that I had left over from a big pack that I had bought, and so I thought, oh, they work quite well on teenage boy cards, and I've got them left over that I need to use. So you know, using up bits and pieces like that. I've had the star wood veneers for a long time, and so I just sort of, if I colour that, then I can use that on the project. So we'll just flip that over, pop that down, and again the same with the other piece. And because this piece is so narrow, I just do 2 long strips along each edge, but on the bigger piece you saw me actually put some double-sided tape down the side as well. Okay, and we'll pop that down there like so. Okay, and this is the part where I need to start making some decisions. So I might bring in those embellishments before I decide how to adhere this to the card. So this is where I might make the choice now of which tag or pop-out piece I actually want on which card, and I think I'm going to go this way for starters, just because I think that that design gets lost on that background a little bit. and this one kind of stands out a little bit more. Now the question is, do I want them to go that way, or definitely like that one in that orientation, and I think I'm a little bit in two minds. I think I actually like it the other way, so in that kind of orientation there, and then we can add our embellishments as we go. So I'm going to adhere those. I made that decision, and then we can start working on each card a little bit more individually. So again, it's that production line. Now the other thing that I've done without really paying much attention is this black cardstock is textured cardstock, and you probably can't see it on camera, but what I've actually done is one side I've actually put the textured cardstock facing outwards, so you'll see it in the final design, and on the other side I've actually switched it up the other way, so I've got the smooth cardstock facing outwards, so you won't see it in the final design. Now that's happened purely by accident because I wasn't really paying attention to what was going on, but it's also a way that you can vary your projects to make them look a little bit different as well. So yeah, sometimes you want that really textured look, and other times you want a really smooth look. So adhere that down, and then we can start working on the cards individually. So I might start with this one because I've got a bit more of an idea of what I'm wanting to do with this. So this tag actually has a little hole there that you can pop out, but I'm actually going to give it a little bit more of a design element, and I'm going to punch a hole, just a small one, using my Crop-A-Dile. Now you could use whatever hole punch you have, but I'm just going to punch it with my Crop-A-Dile, and then I'm actually going to set an eyelet in there as well. So I've just got a little silver eyelet I'm going to pop in there. I can get it to go in, and I'm going to set that eyelet as well. Now one of the other things when you're working with these kind of pieces, whether they be ones that pop out or they're chipboard that you've popped out yourself, often enough they'll have a little bit of a rough edge where they've actually popped out and where they were joined originally. So I generally just go around with my scissors and just neaten up that edge. I mean, you don't have to if you don't want to, but I just find that those little white bits they normally are just tend to annoy me. It's like it doesn't have a clean cut. So I do tend to try and get rid of those. Okay, and then we're going to pop it there like that. Now because this one's already got a star on it, a bigger star, I'm actually going to use the star there because we've got our little embellishment star on this one. So that means that I'm probably going to use the silver cog with the star, and I'll make that look a bit more rustic, and I'm going to use these two cogs on this one here. So before we adhere this down, I'm actually going to do it using some foam adhesive so that there's a bit more dimension to it. And really like these sheets of foam adhesive because you can actually use a whole big piece if you want to, and that's what I'm going to do here. If it was chipboard, I'd probably just put it in the corners and maybe one in the middle, but because it's actually paper, it's a thick paper, but it's still paper, it's actually not as sturdy as chipboard, and so I just want to give it a bit more stable sort of background there. So I'm going to put that to the side. And the other thing that I'm going to do just to give this a bit more of a decorative edge is actually to grab some baker's twine and add it to the middle here. And of course I forgot to get it out before I started the video, so I'm just ducking in to get some out now. So I've got some black baker's twine here. I'm just going to trim that up and feed it through. Because the eyelet's quite small, I have to make sure I get the fold quite small so that I can fit that through. And you can always trim it later if it's too long. I tend to do more than less because you can't add more, but you can always cut some off. So I'm going to add that on a bit of an angle, like so. And then we're going to use some glossy accent to adhere our cogs. So just trying to hide the glossy accent. Be fairly generous with the amount of dots that you do, because they are quite a heavy kind of embellishment. So half on, half off there, and then I'm going to try and, I don't know whether I want to overlap it. It's very difficult with the dimension that we've got here. I think I'm going to put it up the top here. So again, fairly generous with the amount of dots, but making sure you're not putting too much glossy accent on to each spot, otherwise it will ooze out underneath. And because glossy accent does have a glossy dry on it, it can actually show out through your project. So that's that card. I'm happy with how that is. I just need to wait for that glossy accent to dry, and I might actually put some weight on that. Just trying to find something with a bit of weight, just to push it down. I'll probably put my crocodile on there, just to give it a bit more weight to hold that down. Okay, so with this one, I'm going to go with dimensions again, just trimming up those rough pieces. It's not as easy when it's got like a curved border, but if you can at least get those edges that are sort of on the outside, that'd be the way to go. Okay, so this time I'm actually going to cut it into squares, and then we're going to do each corner. So see how the design elements are still the same, and you're still using the same papers and all of that sort of stuff, but they will look a little bit different in the end. And I often make cards like this because I don't like to do a production line of lots of the same card, so I tend to vary it up a little bit. Now because I've got this Stormy Sky Distress Ink out, I'm just going to ink the edges of this just to give it a bit more of a rustic look, because the star is going to be inked as well, and so that'll kind of help tie it all together. And I'm going to put this one on an angle as well. Let's see, how's our star going? Still a little bit wet. I'd probably ideally wait for it to dry a bit longer, but in the interest of getting this video done, you can see that that already makes it, tones down that really bright kind of peacock feathers paint. So I'm going to focus on the edges, and just when I'm happy with the colour of those edges, I'm going to go back through and just tap the middle. So the middle will still be light, but it'll be dark around those edges, and trying not to touch the star where the colour is, because that will actually remove some of the colour. So it's just a matter of deciding where this is going to go now, and I think just down the bottom there, and then the cog over the top. So you can be fairly generous with the glossy accents this time, because it will ooze out a little bit, but it'll ooze out where you want it underneath and give that lift and dimension on that star. And then not too generous with each of the little spots, but again lots of little spots of glossy accents. Okay. And again, I'd probably just put some weight on that to kind of hold it in place, and just trim these up, and you've got yourself 2 cards that look fantastic and are similar in design, haven't taken too long, but are different cards as well. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.